everyone. I am so glad to be here with you at Lead with Tempo again. I'm grateful to Rachel and Alice for having me and for continuing to invest in this community. My name is Amy and I'm the Chief Design Officer at Gusto. We serve more than 300,000 businesses across the United States and enable them to look after their employees and contractors by providing them with reliable tools to run payroll, provide benefits, and help them build a great place to work. Our ecosystem is multifaceted and includes experiences for employers, employees, and experiences for the accountants that support small businesses. Our mission is to create a world where work empowers a better life. And on the design team, we do this by crafting experiences that are easy to use, low stress, that automate repetitive tasks and flatten the learning curve on tasks that can feel overwhelming and sometimes scary to small businesses. I work remotely from home in Toronto, Canada. This is my office. And the team I lead includes interaction designers, content designers, researchers, a small design ops team of 1, and a cross-functional design systems team that includes a PM and a small group of design systems engineers. And I come from a content design background. I started my career in communications roles. I was the 4th content strategist at Meta, Facebook at the time, and I grew my career as a content design leader until I pivoted to UX leadership roles about 6 years ago at Shopify. Even today, I still consider content to be my superpower, and I'm really proud of how content continues to inform my work and the way that I think about great UX. The last year has been a challenging one in the economy and in our industry. There are lots of headwinds, and I know a lot of you are probably wondering what this means for your own career opportunities. Today, I'm going to spend some time mapping out the different pathways content designers might want to consider, the pros and cons of each, and some ways you can prepare yourself for the places you might go. I love the quote, "Design or be designed," by one of our industry leaders, Mia Bloom. This has never been more important. If we don't have a clear vision of what we want to be doing and where we want to go in our careers, it will continue to evolve and happen to us, and we may find ourselves somewhere deeply unsatisfying. Design or be designed is a call to action, to think about the shape of your career with intention. The 4 career paths I'm going to walk you through are archetypes. They're meant to be directional and prototypical, not exhaustive. There are undoubtedly additional paths you might find, and almost certainly rich spaces in between the 4 paths that I'm going to focus on today. If nothing else, I hope you walk away from our time together with a sense of where you are today and some threads to pull as you think about the way you want to spend your time over the next year, 5 years, and through the rest of what is hopefully a long and fulfilling career. My world is one of technology companies and software development, and so that's where I'm going to focus. There are undoubtedly dozens of other career paths for content designers to explore that I'm not going to talk about today. For example, you could be a creative director, you could build your own consultancy, you could go into journalism like one of my previous Facebook colleagues has done. There's no limit to the places you might choose to take your career. If you want to work in the world of technology and software, there are 4 main directions that seem to be the most common, understood, and available to content designers. And that's where I'm going to spend my time today, and I've mapped them out here. The 2 axes in this quadrant are manager to individual contributor and content specialist to UX generalist. The reality, of course, is that these choices are rarely binary, and many people fall somewhere on a spectrum. For example, you might be a content designer who spends most of your time as an IC, but you've recently taken on one direct report. Or maybe you're moving into a generalist product design IC role, responsible for the end-to-end UX, but because you come from a content design background, your area of responsibility is especially content heavy. So while your role may be more generalist, the IC work you're tackling takes you deep into content design territory. Increasingly in the technology sector, I'm seeing an increasing trend towards companies with a preference for the generalist side of the spectrum. This can feel uncomfortable for those of us with deep specialist skills and a passionate belief in the value and potential of our crafts. The encouragement I can offer about this is that in many ways, these binaries are false. In my career today, I live in the upper right quadrant. As a chief design officer, and before that, a senior director of UX, I have never abandoned my content first lens. I see it as my superpower, and it informs how I think about my role, how I assess UX work, and what I expect of people on my team. I think as content designers, we may occasionally be a bit too precious about our swim lanes. And in other cases, people may have made content designers feel like they can only occupy the left side of this quadrant effectively. The reality is that good UX is good UX, and building great experiences requires people to use all kinds of different lenses while solving problems collaboratively. So let's dig into the people leadership part of this quadrant. So this side of the quadrant is, of course, focused on people who want to spend their time and make an impact primarily through growing others. Early in my career, I thought that the only path to growth and seniority was through people leadership and management. 5 to 10 years ago, this was more true than it is today. There used to be more of a ceiling on individual contributor roles, and often organizations operated in a way that invited managers into decision-making spaces while leaving ICs out of the room. I think this has changed a lot, and if anything, companies are realizing the value of the individual contributor, not just in getting things done, but because of their strategic thinking and depth of knowledge. One of the things I wish I'd known before making the leap to management was how uncomfortable it would feel for a while, taking a step back from producing creative artifacts, and how much I would miss being able to point to a document, a workflow, or other piece of shippable work as a signal of the value I was creating. As a manager, your signal of impact is your team, their health, their performance, their impact. You are primarily responsible for creating the conditions where they can do great work that impacts the customer and the business, and where they can feel happy, healthy, and connected while doing it. This can be challenging, especially in the context of external factors that are outside of your control, like the pandemic, like the economic headwinds. And there are also internal factors like cross-functional misalignment around incentives and what matters. It's sort of like driving a car down a highway while simultaneously trying to change a flat tire without crashing the car. Management can be deeply fulfilling, but also lonely and emotionally laborious. I say this because the decision to become a manager, to become the steward of people's careers, should not be taken lightly, and definitely not because it feels like the fastest way to grow in your own career. As a content designer who may be considering a people leadership track, there are generally 2 ways of approaching it. The theme of this talk is really that although I'm presenting these like they're distinct paths, this is a false binary. The work across these 2 paths is similar, but the organizational structures and the way companies tend to think about and position these opportunities is distinct. For example, content design directors tend to only lead content designers, while UX leaders or design directors tend to lead cross-functional design teams. In most companies that have content design leadership, they tend to report into the UX leader, while people at the highest level of generalist UX roles, like a VP of UX or a chief design officer, tend to report into another C-level, often a chief product officer or a CEO. There are some great examples of people who are incredible content design leaders in our community, including Candy Williams, who's a director of content design at Bumble, Jonathan Coleman, who's the head of content design at HubSpot, and Sheila O'Hara, who is the head of content design at Slack. The T-shape is often used to describe a certain set of competencies. The top of the T is broad and general, and the foot of the T is deep specialization and expertise. Content design leaders who focus on people management bring their deep skills and understanding of content design from their years of working diligently within the craft, and they apply that to the role of managing and leading teams of content people. Where they spike at the top of the T is as leaders who understand how to connect the work content designers are doing to customer and business impact, and it also shows up in how they work to create the conditions for content designers to be successful. The watch-outs for people who aspire to become content design directors or VPs is that in many companies, content design teams are small. And in those circumstances, the philosophy is often to have them report into a generalist design or UX leader versus a manager who specializes in content design. Any org structure has trade-offs, and in this case, the trade-off is having someone with deep content expertise driving the practice, which no doubt can accelerate it, improve the UX, and create a more supportive community of practice for content designers. On the other hand, when different design crafts all report up into specialist managers, it can result in siloed thinking, work, and can create additional challenges in alignment. A key opportunity for people to consider if this is the path they want to follow is to think of content leadership as broadly as possible to include brand, marketing, and product content. The alternative for content designers who want to go into people leadership is to become generalists, which is what I've done in my own career. These are some of the people who have also made this shift, whose work and leadership I admire. Sadia Latifi is a director of UX at Shopify, leading a large cross-functional team. Alicia Doherty-Wold was the first content design manager at Facebook, and she was my previous boss. She's still at Meta and is now in a VP of content design, product design, and creative role. Talk about a fantastic model of a generalist whose career grounding is content design. Finally, there's Ellen McKenzie, who works on my team at Gusto as the head of design for apps, leading a large team of people working across design, research, and content to make our core experiences easy to use. Like the others, Ellen comes from a content design background. Content designers who move into broad UX leadership tend to be leading very large cross-functional design teams. They need to be able to understand and support all of the crafts they empower enough to create the conditions and expectations for people to do their best work. Even as cross-functional UX leaders, their expertise and grounding in content design is valuable. Content designers know how to think beyond the pixels. We're natural systems thinkers who consider the structure of an experience. We also know what a powerful and critical component language is in helping people develop a clear mental model so they can use, navigate, and understand our products. All of this is incredibly important as a design leader. In fact, and I may be biased here, but I would say that people from content design backgrounds make incredible UX leaders. The main watch out for people who want to pursue this path is that some companies don't share my belief that content designers can move into generalist UX leadership roles. Earlier in my career, when a design director who I respected tried to convince me to report into her versus another content design leader, I asked her whether she could imagine a world where a product designer might report into me. She was very clear that her answer to this was no. She couldn't fathom a way that a content designer could adequately grow or support a UX designer. I think this is swiftly changing, especially as we have such great models of people who have moved from content design to UX leadership. It is something to pay attention to, though, as you're assessing opportunities in different companies. My favorite part of being a UX leader is that I can use my position to build more craft-inclusive UX versus UI-focused teams. I truly believe this results in the best customer experiences, and being in a position to advocate for this and create the conditions for it is incredibly fulfilling. Fundamentally, as you're designing your career, it's all about trade-offs and how you want to spend your time. No role is perfect, and there are always challenges. Everyone has a boss, even your CEO. And if you're in a leadership role, a big part of your job will always be to ensure that your teams are delivering on impact and value, and that you're able to continually articulate that impact and value in tangible terms to the business. Okay, let's shift to the left side of the quadrant to talk a bit about the path of craft IC leadership. Throughout this section, I use the term IC a lot, which stands for individual contributor. These are folks who continue to grow and advance in their careers, but instead of doing that through managing others, they do it through continuing to be builders. Folks on the craft IC leadership path spend their time making, collaborating, and in very senior positions, they tend to focus their time and energy on the most gnarly and complex systems challenges. They tend to work at a thematic level, connecting the dots across different projects and thinking holistically about the UX. Although they don't tend to manage others, they do play a critical role in leveling up their teams, often taking a lead role in craft rituals like critiques and through mentorship with more junior crafters. Like anyone else, they need to rigorously connect their craft work to customer and business impact. Great UX is a critical lever for the business, and telling that story over and over again is a key way of building the support and investment necessary to continue to increase the organizational maturity of a design practice. Perhaps even more than in the people leadership side of the quadrant, there is very little distinction between very senior content IC roles and very senior UX or design IC roles. 5 years ago, it was fairly uncommon for content designers to go into a UX craft path because their skill set was perceived to be too specialized. But increasingly, this is not the case, and we have more and more examples of people who have made this transition to great effect. And there are some wonderful role models who have grown their careers and impact as content builders. The folks on this slide have continued to grow and build their careers as content leaders, contributing directly and making their impact as practitioners. Sarah Winters is the content design OG who revolutionized the way the entire UK government approached good content and good UX through her work, and has since founded her own company and consultancy. Ebony Thomas is a senior staff content designer at Shopify, where she works on meaty challenges that span teams. And Clay Delk is a principal content designer at Lattice, where he's driving great UX through thoughtful content design work. People who choose to focus on content design as individual contributors and who want to continue to grow their careers, influence, and impact through this work have the deepest knowledge and mastery in content design. They are industry experts. They often operate in companies with small content design teams, and although they aren't managers, part of their role is to level up the overall quality of content experiences, often through scaled approaches like taking ownership of content standards. One thing to watch out for is companies who don't think content design is an equivalent craft, and so the job levels for a content designer have a ceiling. Content designers, like product designers, should have space to continue to ascend to the principal level as they grow in their craft skills and their impact. And there's so much opportunity and goodness in this role, and an endless amount of impact to the UX that can be driven for companies that invest in content design craft at this level. The last corner of the quadrant is a relatively new phenomenon that is happening more and more, and that is content designers who want to continue down an IC path, but who want to apply those skills by moving into product design or UX practitioner roles. There's very little in practice that looks different between what these folks do and what a content design principal would do, but the framing and shift can make space for meaningful opportunities to influence the overall UX of a product through the lens of content first. These are the three folks who have made this shift that are top of mind for me. Lisa Verhul, who comes from a content design background and is now a founder and designer for her own startup. Jason Rhino, who now works as a journey design lead for the Royal Bank of Canada. And Marissa Gemma, a product design lead at Gusto, who started her career as a content designer. The shape of a design craft IC lead who comes from a content design background is very similar to a content design principal, with a bit more emphasis on the top of the T. The watch-out is really organizations who think content design is a specialization that doesn't include the transferable skills necessary to move into a design IC role. This is limiting thinking, and one opportunity for people in this role, or who would like to move into it, is to help their organizations make the cultural shift necessary to focus on great UX over perfect pixels. Because content is design. It's a critical element of the user experience. Whether you continue to focus on growing your career explicitly as a content designer or transition to being a UX design IC, the work, the key themes, and the end goals are the same. Especially in an environment where companies are focusing a lot of their hiring energy on generalists, it's important for content designers to know that the work they do is foundational UX design work, and that designer roles should be on their list of possibilities to consider. But back to the quote by Mia Bloom. It's very easy to get caught up in our careers and let them just happen to us. Suddenly we look around and aren't entirely sure how we got to where we are, or whether or even if we want to stay or go. It's a position of incredible privilege to be able to be intentional about your career. Many people don't have this opportunity. And so if you are in a position to chart a course for yourself, it's imperative to make space to do it. We all spend a lot of time, creative and emotional energy at work. So to do something that doesn't invigorate you and challenge you in the best possible ways, if you have the agency to design your career, is a waste. You can get started on this today. The next time you visit a park or you're out exploring a neighborhood, look for and get inspired by desire paths. These are the little pathways worn over time by human and animal will, and the desire to find a better way forward and through. We're often unaware of desire paths while we're making them, real or metaphorical. Now think about the desire paths you've worn over time in your career. Ask yourself, Who are the people in the industry whose careers you admire, and what makes you admire them? What work energizes you? What work depletes you? What work would you love to do, but you haven't found an opportunity, or you've been too scared to try? If you could choose your own adventure and treat the 4 pathways I've defined like a menu, and you could choose pieces from each, what would you choose? If you won the lottery tomorrow and could do anything you wanted for the rest of your life without having to worry about money, how would you spend your time? Of the career paths I've outlined, which parts draw you in? Which parts repel you? Although I've talked about 4 archetypal content design careers, what is probably most interesting is actually the space in between them. The reality is that most companies don't really know what to do with content designers. And the more opinionated we are about the kind of work we want to do, the way we want to spend our time, and the value we can add, the more freedom we'll have to shape the mold rather than just fill it. So don't wait for somebody to tell you what to do or how to add value. Design your career and draw a line between your work and the value and impact you're creating so that your boss's boss, and your cross-functional partners understand it too. Job titles are a wrapper. What matters is how you spend your time, your precious and your limited time, and whether that feels good to you. In order to ask for what you want and need and begin to find it, you need to understand it and be able to articulate it yourself. This may sound obvious, but be honest. When was the last time you sat down and asked yourself, what do I want to do? What are my goals? Where do I want to be in 1 year or 5 years? For myself. Careers are long and they are rarely linear these days. So think about where you want to go. I want to end by reading you a little bit from the book, Oh, the Places You'll Go by Dr. Seuss. When I graduated from high school a very long time ago, my mother gave me this book as a gift. My mom worked as an administrative assistant and then as a coordinator for patient services for the Canadian Cancer Society. She lived in my hometown in the Canadian prairies her entire life. She had enormous dreams for her future, but she put them off, thinking that one day she would have the financial freedom and the time to do all the things she dreamed about. She died very suddenly of an aggressive form of cancer a few years ago, at only 60 years old. She taught me the importance of not putting off life. So here goes. Congratulations. Today is your day. You're off to great places. You're off and away. You have brains in your head. You have feet in your shoes. You can steer yourself any direction you choose. You're on your own and you know what you know, and you are the one who'll decide where to go. You'll look up and down streets, look them over with care. About some you will say, I don't choose to go there. With your head full of brains and your shoes full of feet, you're too smart to go down any not so good street. And you may not find any you'll want to go down. In that case, of course, you'll head straight out of town. It's opener there in the wide open air. Out there things can happen and frequently do to people as brainy and footsy as you. You'll be on your way up, you'll be seeing great sights. You'll join the high flyers who soar to high heights. You won't lag behind because you'll have the speed. You'll pass the whole gang and you'll soon take the lead. Wherever you fly, you'll be best of the best. Wherever you go, you will top all the rest. Except when you don't. Because sometimes you won't. I'm sorry to say so, but sadly it's true that bang-ups and hang-ups can happen to you. You can get all hung up in a prickly perch, and your gang will fly on, you'll be left in a lurch. You'll come down from the lurch with an unpleasant bump, and the chances are then that you'll be in a slump. And when you're in a slump, you're not in for much fun. Unslumping yourself is not easily done. You will come to a place where the streets are not marked, some windows are lighted, but mostly they're darked. A place you could sprain both your elbow and chin. Do you dare to stay out? Do you dare to go in? How much can you lose? How much can you win? And if you should go in, should you turn left or right 3/4, or maybe not quite, or go around back and sneak in from behind? Simple it's not, I'm afraid you will find, for a mind-maker-upper to make up his mind. You can get so confused that you'll start in to race down long wiggled roads at a breaknecking pace and grind on for miles across weirdish wild space, headed, I fear, towards a most useless place, the waiting place, for people just waiting. waiting for a train to go or a bus to come or a plane to go or the mail to come or the rain to go or the phone to ring or the snow to snow or the waiting around for a yes or a no or waiting for their hair to grow. Everyone is just waiting. But no, that's not for you. You'll get mixed up, of course, as you already know. You'll get mixed up with many strange birds as you go. So be sure when you step with care and great tact, and remember that life's a great balancing act. Just never forget to be dexterous and deft, and never mix up your right foot with your left. And will you succeed? Yes, you will, indeed. 98.75% guaranteed. Kid, you'll move mountains. You're off to great places. Today is your day. Your mountain is waiting. So get on your way. Thanks, everyone.